what is the secret to success?
Self-discipline is everything.
I'm gonna show you how great I am.
The only way to do great work is to love what you do.
What are you gonna do?
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Trainade Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Sullivan, and this is the podcast where we speak with high performers to find out what they do every day to be the best at what they do. Today, our guest is Brad Riddell. Brad is a professional mixed martial artist from New Zealand and is currently signed to the UFC lightweight division. Brad is one of the most accomplished and recognized kickboxers in the world, sharing the stage with combat sport legend John Wayne Parr, and you may even know him from the viral video of him fighting a monk in a kickboxing match. If you haven't seen that video, go and watch it. It is absolutely crazy. If you know the sport of MMA, then you know Brad is one of the biggest prospects coming out of New Zealand. He trains alongside UFC Middleweight champion Israel Adesanya and has been a long-time striking coach of UFC Featherweight champ Alexander the Great Volkanovski. Brad has an undefeated record in the UFC octagon, and many people in the know are placing him to be the next UFC World Champion out of this part of the world. Across this two-part series with Brad, we will talk about Brad's early career, his move from rugby to fighting, how he met his coach Eugene Behrman, how he developed his ironclad mental fortitude, his cutting-edge training methods, and much more. If you're a young athlete, then this is absolutely a chat you need to listen to, so let's get to it. All right, we are recording live for our second episode of the Trainade Performance Podcast, joined by the one and only Brad Quake Riddell. Brad, thanks for coming on, brother.
You forced me, so it wasn't much choice.
Yeah, I was going to say, I put it to him, I wasn't going to work with him anymore, and because I'm such a valuable part of his team, he said, I'm absolutely coming on that podcast, don't you worry.
You're going to cut my calories again.
Yeah. Where are you now? You're in quarantine. Whereabouts? You guys not in Auckland, you're in Christchurch?
I'm in the finest city the world's ever put on a map, bro. Christchurch.
And for those who aren't watching the YouTube video, you won't be able to see, but you do have a roommate floating around somewhere. Who are you bunking in with?
Oh, he's eating all the ribs that just got dropped off. There he is.
There he is. Big bad. UFC Featherweight, Shane Young. That's a deadly combo.
I keep him in line.
Yeah, that's it. Brad just went on a bit of a hunting spree. What's that place called that we went to? What's it called?
Bass Pro Hunting Store.
Yeah, the Bass Pro Hunting Store. Let's quickly explain that, because I think when I went in there, you guys kind of explained it to me, but when you got in there, it was like a whole nother world, a whole nother level. And I think people who are outside of America don't get it. Give us a quick 30-second rundown of what the Bass Pro Store is.
If you're from New Zealand and Australia, it's like a Westfield of guns and knives and fishing things. You got Westfield, eh? In Australia. Yeah. It's the size of a Westfield shopping mall, but it's just guns, knives, semi-automatic machine guns, fishing gear, hunting gear. It's epic. It's like a playground. And so I bought a bunch of blades, bunch of flick knives, and got them back in New Zealand. So I'm stoked about that. But
it's wild, hey, because it's massive. It's like I don't know, from anyone's like the massive Westfield centers, where it's just it's like 2 or 3 levels. It's connected to a casino, and there was like a little running river thing. And there's literally, guns. There's just like semi-automatic guns, like rifles, all this stuff. Yeah, it's just like, it's the most America thing I've ever seen. It was like guns and beers and gambling, and then just big dead animals. It was wild.
Everything you need in life is in there. Jerky.
Yeah, for sure. Well, anyway, let's get into it, Brad. So we just got back from Las Vegas. We finished that up, March Madness, which kind of turned into somewhat of a disaster trip. Anyone that follows UFC and the sport will understand what we're talking about. You were prepped to fight Gregor Gillespie. That was a massive thing for you going in. He's ranked number 15 at the moment. He just came off that loss from Kevin Lee. Took about a year and a bit off, and then that was your comeback fight. The prep for Gregor, working with you, your prep for Gregor was immaculate. I was super excited for that fight. Everyone was super excited. But unfortunately, because of COVID and the COVID-19 protocols at the UFC, you did have to withdraw. Talk us through. Tell us what happened. Tell us how you found out that fight wasn't happening, what your reaction was to it, and what went through your head.
So how did that week start? Everyone was negative. Everyone's tested negative the first test, and then Everything was normal. Probably actually a bit better than normal because we made weight super easy, and then we woke up. I woke up fight morning to like missed calls from like a Vegas number, but last time I was in America with Carlos, like I kept getting these like calls from like telemarketers and shit because I had an American SIM, and I was like, I assumed it was those. So like I just kept ignoring the calls and hanging up and going back to sleep. I was like, nah, I want to sleep a bit more. It was like 8 a.m. and then it kept ringing. I was like, fuck, what the hell? So I answered it, and it was like, I think Amber from the UFC, and she was asking like, oh, have you been in contact with a couple of people in your team? And I'm like, yeah, they're in my team and we stay in like rooms, and she was like, okay, cool, I'll ring you back. And I was like, all right. Then she rang back and she's like, have you ever had COVID? And I'm like, nah, I haven't. And she's like, okay, I'll ring you back soon. And I was like, all right, whatever. And then I was like, getting like a sneaking suspicion. I was like, fuck, do I have COVID? And then I was like, nah, fuck, whatever, I'll just go to sleep. And so I went back to sleep. And then the next phone call was like Eugene, and it was like 3 or 4 a.m. in New Zealand. And I looked at the phone and I was like, fuck. I knew exactly what was coming out of that phone. And he rang, he like answer, and he's like, look, stay calm, but they're going to pull your fight. And I was just like, I just went crazy, and then like hung up, and I was real fucked off and marching around, ripping up my bed and stuff. And we tried to get like the antibody test, but they were like, nah, it's not fast enough. And I didn't even have COVID. That was what was annoying, is they pulled it as a precaution because people near me had it. And then I was like, fuck. So I kind of understood, but then I also didn't, because we were both healthy and we both I was negative that morning. So we got results that morning and I was negative. And bullshit. I can fight. And I messaged Gregor, and Gregor was like, yeah, like he wants to fight too. He was still fine with it. And then they were like, nah.
Yeah, and like you said, like I've been pretty public about it. Like me and Volk and Colby come out saying like we were the guys that we did test positive within that group, and I actually could hear you scream. I remember that. I woke up in that morning. It was pretty early in the morning Vegas time, and I could just hear you going off, and I was like, oh, that is not good news. That is not good news at all. But they pulled you for COVID-19 protocol just for being around like us when we tested positive, right? Because for those who aren't familiar with how the UFC sets it up now with the quarantine, we all test negative, and then you go into the quarantine, what they call bubble, and you're very like separated from everyone else, and you only really make contact with anyone else in passing when you go into the training center and whatnot. Somehow in there, it all got in and yada, yada, yada. But Brad, you always tested negative. You tested negative that fight week. Even when they retested you that weigh-in day, that was when, unfortunately, a few of us popped. You still tested negative. And then the following week, you were still in the bubble with the guys, with Shane and Jamie, helping them get ready, and you tested negative going into that bubble, and then you tested negative again a week later before you cornered them.
Yeah, I tested 3 times that week, all negative. And then a negative again after their fight to come home, and then a negative twice here. I don't know why they've tested me twice here already. Usually only do 2 tests, but they've tested me twice here. Maybe they've been looking at the media or something. But yeah, so that was annoying because I could have fought and could have been ranked 15th in the world. So
yeah, do you think we were talking about it? And I don't know if you want to put this out there, but when you were over there with Carlos Olberg obviously went and had his Dana White Contender Series. You and Israel went over. You guys were over there for like, what, 6-7 weeks, even longer?
Yeah, 9 weeks, I think. 9 weeks or something.
Yeah, 9 weeks. So you shot down to San Diego. You're training with the guys down at ATOS down there. Do you think that you picked it up down there, and is that why you were testing negative, even though we were all in close quarters with each other, like, yeah, separating a bit here and there, but do you think that's why you tested negative? Is you probably picked it up down there? You've got the immunity response. You've got the antibodies. And so you technically can't get it?
Yeah, probably. Like, we did get a little bit sick down there. It was cold and we were jumping in the ocean in like their winter. But, yeah, the gym we're at, a few people got it for a bit. And then me and Iz and stuff went to LA and we got tested for like that Mike Tyson fight. And we were still negative, Well, like maybe, I don't know, maybe it like ran through us real quick or something and we got the antibodies or something. I don't know. I'll get the antibody test and find out, but hopefully get the vaccine as well. But yeah, man, could have been, a huge contributing factor. But like I had no proof that I'd had it, right? I didn't have like a positive test and then negative now saying that I had the antibodies, because I think if I did, they would have let me fight, because they kept asking if I'd had it, which seemed to be like a major concern of theirs, or like a big question. So I guess they were trying to find out if I'd had it. That means I wasn't going to get it. But because I couldn't, I didn't lie. Yeah, they were like.
Yeah,
But if I did lie, they would have been like, cool, show us the positive, like, result. I'd have been like, don't have it. And I would have been like, oh, you're lying. And then I just look like a liar from that day forwards. And you can't be trusted. So it's better just to tell the truth.
Yeah. What was going through your head in the hours afterwards? So once the UFC called it, they said, you know what, we're not going to let you fight. We know you don't have COVID. We know you've been in contact with people who do have it. We're not quite sure if you've had it in the past before. We don't know if you have the antibodies and you're quote unquote immune to it. What goes through your head in those next few hours?
It was a weird feeling, bro. Hadn't had it before. I wasn't too sure how to deal with it. I sort of just sat by myself for a long time. But I just felt a bit lost. And didn't really want to eat, drink, nothing like that. Because, even like, that was, I don't know, that day was fucked. But the following days were worse because I felt like I didn't really like deserve anything. Like you usually have a hard fight, or I presume that was going to be a hard fight. And then you'll have a bit of a feed and you have a few beers or something like that. And you're like, yeah, man, I deserve this shit. You can chill out for a few days. But I don't feel like I deserve shit, because I didn't do anything. And I just wasted all this time going over there away from my kid and stuff, and knew that I had 2 weeks of quarantine still to come. 3 weeks in total, because of the week I still had to stay for cornering Shane. So I was just a bit lost, and so I just sort of went back to training a little bit with Frank and stuff, and we were still shut in the room, so we could only run around, the quad, and we weren't allowed to leave that or anything. So it was really, really annoying, and just had a lot of pent up energy, I guess, and rage. And so we did that was quarantine for 2 weeks, and then quarantine here for 2 weeks. So it's been a real annoying time, but I'm going to fight June 12th. So that's coming up. That's like 9 weeks away. Don't know who yet, but, I aim for the top 15 again. So whether or not Gregor's still available, I think he's going to fight soon. I've asked for a couple of guys like Al Quinta or Diego Ferreira, so some dudes that they look like horrible fights and, look available to me.
Mentally, what do you do to get through that? So obviously when you take that, you said obviously you're super angry, you're raging, upset, you're going through the whole roller coaster of emotions, but then you had to hang around for an extra week and you cornered Shane, you cornered Jamie. And then like you said, you come back here, you do the 2 week quarantine. And like you just said, there's a potential fight coming up in June. So what's that, 8-10 weeks away? So you've potentially got to jump straight back into camp when you get out of here. Mentally, how do you get through that? How do you go through having that week where you've got to stay focused and then corner the guys and then come back and reset and go, okay, I'm going to do this all again?
Well, I was worse having no fight, to be honest. Like having nothing on the horizon was what was driving me nuts. But now that I have a date and it's not that far away, that's good though, because now I have some direction and a goal again. But the week after the fight with Shane, the first couple of days were a bit stink, because we're still a few days out from Shane's fight, and we're all kind of still stressing out whether or not Shane was going to get COVID or Jamie was going to get COVID. That's what we were waiting for. We were like, oh man, they're going to ring us one day and tell us that those two guys have it, and then they're not fighting. I'm going to be like, fuck, this trip is the worst. But then, fortunately, they didn't get it. So when they tested negative again, I was like, all right, cool. So I just sort of put my energy into Shane and, bullied Lopez most of the week and with Frank, and just try to distract myself a little bit. So it wasn't too bad. And we managed to change our voucher to get home a little bit earlier, a hell of a lot earlier. if we still had our original voucher, we'd still be there till the 10th. That would have ground a hole through me. But yeah, the fact that we got like a voucher home pretty much straight after Shane's fight, and Shane had a good fight in my opinion. I love that fight. That was pretty cool to corner that one. That was like a game plan that we just went with and stuck to, and just needed a little bit more output. I think we could have won that one, but that was a cool fight to corner. It's like playing a little video game.
Yeah, it was a pretty miserable trip, I suppose, at the end of it. But like you and me spoke about, there were a few positives to take out of it. And you and I spoke about it too. It's like that was another trip that we went down to lightweight. We made the weight, got on the scale. Like just from our end, that's a real positive. I was super happy with the prep, and it just opens up more doors to improve for your next camp. How was your prep in all other areas for Gregor? Because obviously Gregor's super tough, one of the best, if not the best. Probably him and Islam are probably the two best wrestlers in the lightweight division. What was your prep in all the other areas like for him?
It was mean, to be honest. Like we had like a really cool game plan that I was excited to have a crack at. You know, usually I have like a game plan as a rough guide, and most of the guys I've fought so far have been pretty like evenly matched on the ground, just I guess because of my strength. Like I'm quite strong, so I can sort of counteract a lot of grappling with just like brute strength and fitness. But so I've been able to like waver on and off the plan of all my previous fights. But this one, you know, Gregor looks strong as shit. And from what me and you found out there, he like barely cuts weight. You know, he walks around, 73 kilos, something like that. And so he looked strong and looked fit. So I really did have to stick to the game plan that I had. So I was pretty pumped to like test myself and make sure I could stick with it, even if shit was going bad, like get back up and stick to that original plan that Eugene Twister gave me. So yeah, it was cool preparation, bro. It was very tiring, to be honest, because it was a heap of wrestling with like fresh training partners, and a lot of grinding for that one, just in case it went south and turned out to be that sort of fight.
Yeah. One for the books, but I'm sure we'll see it in the future, no doubt. But let's go back. I want to talk. We've spoken about this heaps before, but just for the guys listening in, I kind of want to go back to the early days of Quake and talk about your transition when you're coming up through Christchurch playing rugby, and then you taking those first steps into your Muay Thai gym and then working your way through to Tiger Muay Thai. Can you kind of talk us through? Let's start when you were playing rugby, and let's start in the early days when you got into fighting. What went on there? Why did you move from, playing rugby? You're pretty good from all reports. I won't boot your boots up too much, but pretty good by all reports, and then move into fighting. How'd that all come to be?
Well, what was I doing? I was playing like Colts for a really good team called Sydenham, and man, they're still really good. I had a really good coach, crazy good team, and we actually won the final that year. And it was looking like I was gonna have a pretty maybe a career in rugby. I don't know. Who knows? But the way I visualized myself was having a career in rugby. And then one game, someone hit me with like a grass cutter, like a diving, really low tackle. Like
Such
ankle
high.
Yeah, I used to do them. No, fuck, they're dangerous. But he hit me real good in the ankles, and he snapped my left leg completely in half. Like, the bone was completely broke, and it was just hanging on by the skin. And so that sucked, and I went to hospital. But the thing is, I had like a fight for like a South Island title or something, maybe the following week or a couple of weeks later. And like, I was like gutted. I was so gutted about that. That's all I could really think about, was that I didn't get a fight for the belt. And they put a heap of plates and screws in my leg, and it got fixed up. And when I got out of hospital, the whole time in there, I was just thinking about fighting all the time, and I was watching heaps of fights, and I was like, man, I need to get out of this place. And a mate of mine was going to Thailand, and so I was like, fuck it. When I get out of here, when I get out of this cast, I want to go to Thailand. So got out of the cast, like, I don't know, I think it was like 6 weeks in the cast. It was quite a long time. Then I was at home for a couple of weeks, and it was still fresh as hell, man. Like, walking was hard and stuff. And then I think a month after I was out of the cast, I went to Thailand, which was mental now I think about it, because the Thais don't really, understand the whole rehab and stuff like that. So they'll just like go running. So I was like running on this chicken leg that was all bolted up and like had zero flexion in my ankle. It was just like landing on a flat, stomping foot. And that was pretty much my rehab, was just like Thai style training, which was mental. But it didn't come out too bad. Like I rehabbed it a few years later, and it seems to be all right now. But that's how I got into fighting. Well, that's how I ended up fighting full time. Was that accident in rugby, man? That's what made me sort of have an epiphany and realize what I really wanted.
So if you were playing Colts, you would have been like, what, 18, 19, around there?
Yeah, I was I just first year out of school. So I was 18. Yeah, 18, I was in Thailand when I was 18. Crazy place to be when you're 18, that's for sure.
Were you dipping your toes in both, obviously, playing footy and then playing, like, obviously fighting and stuff? So at what point was it when you broke your leg that you're like, okay, like, I can't keep doing this? Or is it just more like, okay, fighting's more important to me than rugby is?
Yeah, it was like I just missed fighting. I've been playing rugby since I was like 5. Literally since I was 5. I think I started touch rugby when I was 5. And so I don't know, maybe had enough. Because I had enough of it, and fighting was like, I was always a pretty aggressive rugby player. Didn't mind getting into a biff and stuff, but and just fighting suited me. Fighting really suited me, and I like the style of training, and the adrenaline. Got a lot of adrenaline from it back then. So I just wanted to change, bro, and so I ended up, now I'm still here doing it. I guess it was just as long as I played rugby, about 15 years.
Yeah. So you went over to Thailand, you were 19, went over. Were you fighting professional at that stage when you went over there?
Nah, man. When I went over there, I'd had 2 fights, I think. And then the third was supposed to be that South Island title because, it's pretty hard. It was back then, it was hard to get fights because there wasn't many going around. It was a pretty weird sport to do. I was busy in Auckland, but I just didn't know that yet. And so I went over there with like 2 fights. Stayed there for a couple of months and had a fight just before I left. Had a pro fight just before I left, and then I came back here. Well, I guess there's only pro fights there, right? Because you only get paid there even when you're a kid. So I had a fight there. I came back, and I had a couple here. Moved to Auckland, had a heap up there, and then moved back to Thailand from like 22, something like that, 21, 22, and stayed there for like a good 4 or 5 years.
So 21 to 22. So that's like what? So you're 26, 27. And that's when you're kind of spending all that time at Tiger Muay Thai and you slowly transition into the head Muay Thai coach over there.
Oh, kickboxing, definitely not Muay Thai. I was like teaching like sort of a weird hybrid kickboxing Muay Thai style there, man. And between like 18 and 21, 22, I just go back and forwards. I just come back here and work, get money, go back there, spend it all, come back, work, put up jib, go back there. And I had a really good gym in Auckland too, but I didn't start teaching until I think like 25 or 26. And I was shit. Like I was a shit coach then, bro. I don't know what I was doing.
Why'd you get into the coaching? Was it the cash? Was that why you're doing it? It's like, hey, if you want to make more cash, or what got you into the coaching? Because that's early. That's early to get into coaching, right?
Yeah, Roger Huerta, bro, told me to do it. He was like, no, everyone watching this will know who Roger Huerta is, but he was like the UFC man, in his day. I think he actually he just fought a couple of days ago, bro, on Bellator. That dude will always be down for a scrap till the day he dies. He's wild, man. Mexican dude. But yeah, he called me. I was at home, and he was like, the current coach there got sacked, and they were like, oh, he was like, man, you should come back and teach because you're always coming back here, and you're pretty good at fighting. You should coach. And I was like, man, I don't know how to coach. And he's like, no, I'll back you. He was coaching at the time. He's like, I'll help you. I'll teach you how to do it and help you with coaching. And I was like, oh shit. But then that was like my way out, right? That was my way to not have to come home and have to work, bro. That was my way out of working. I could just train full time. So I was like, it wasn't like much money, man. I think I got paid like $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, something like that. But that was heaps over there. That's what you needed there. And I was like, yeah. And then I was fighting too, so I was getting paid to fight. So I was like, yeah, mean. So I moved back, started coaching, and fuck, I had no idea, bro, what to do. I remember like paying for like heaps of online striking coaches courses, trying to teach myself how to teach, watching heaps of stuff on YouTube. I was watching Roger teach like MMA and stuff, and all my mates over there came to my classes because at the start everyone was like, who the hell is this guy like teaching the kickboxing class? You know, like all these Russians and Brazilians and Chechens and stuff all come in this class, like, and, you know, those guys are like big on proving yourself. So I was like, fuck. And so all the boys would turn up to my classes, make sure it looked busy, help me. And yeah, man, that's how I sort of developed from there. Just
Did you feel like you had a bit of imposter syndrome when you started off in those classes?
Yeah, bro, I was faking it till I made it hard.
So if you were doing that, what was the lifestyle like? You said you're making $1,000 a month, and that's pretty good living. What's the lifestyle over there in Thailand while you're going through all of this?
It was cool, bro. Like, I was like more driven to be able to fight as much as I could. That's why the lifestyle was mean. Like, I mean, I taught 2 classes a day. I worked 2 hours a day, like compulsory. But I held shitloads of pads, bro. I'd hold like 4, 5, 6 sessions a day, like 5 or 6 hours of pads, because okay, what else do you do? You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to make money as well. You know, I think I got paid like $50 or $60 a private for an hour of pads. But man, I used to get the dudes that they always used to hit so hard, like always fighters, man. I always got fighters, and they'd be bashing me for the whole hour. So I got real conditioned doing that. And for quite a while, when I was like maybe 26 or so, I didn't train quite as much. It like really impacted my training because I was just beat from holding pads and stuff all day because I was like chasing the money pretty hard. So I'd train like once a day, and then I'd like use all that pad work and stuff as like conditioning, and because I'd just like kick them and hit them back and stuff. So I'd practically spar for like 4 hours straight. And then sometimes I'd want to do sparring or like drilling in their sessions. So yeah, man, I was a workhorse for a while.
Yeah, I know we've gone over all of this before, so it's like kind of like beating a dead horse. But just for the guys listening, what I want to get out of this is I want to ask you is what effect do you think, or what impact did that have coaching so early in your career to when you actually came and you dropped this and you went full time? Because it is early, and when you watch you fight, or if you talk to you about fighting, you're super analytical, and you're way more analytical than a lot of fighters even, and you break things down and you see things that I think a lot of fighters just don't see, or they don't seem to have the level of fight IQ that you have. How much of an impact did doing all of this coaching while you're in Thailand have on that?
Oh, heaps, because you know, I thought I was pretty good at fighting until I started coaching and like finding a lot of stuff and learning a lot of new techniques and stuff. And then I found out that I was just like really fit and tough, and I could hit hard. That's what I learned when I started coaching. I was like, man, I'm really not that technically good. I'm just like a brute. And so, yeah, when I started having to teach myself how to coach, it made me a way better fighter, man. And then I got heaps of people sort of coming to me asking them to like watch their opponents and stuff like that. So I was like, oh shit, trying to teach myself like game plans. And you know, I had like a lot of other coaches that would come in and out with like their own fighters as well. Like one guy in particular I always remember was a guy called Pat. He's come over with Andrew Holbrook, who's a UFC fighter of my weight. I'm not sure if he's still in there. But Pat was, I think it was McPherson. He was a boxing coach. And man, that guy had a real good brain on him. And he ran a gym in America that was like free of charge. It just like taught delinquents and naughty kids and stuff like that. He was just such a good dude, bro. And he taught me a lot. You know, he used to hold pads to me, and he taught me a lot about coaching and breaking fights down. So I had people like that would pop in and like teach me, bro. Just I'd get coached by coaches, and I'd train with them and learn as I was training with them and stuff like that. And that's where I learned a lot of my stuff in MMA as well. Before I was at Citykickboxing, was Russians, wrestling coaches and stuff. The coaches quite often come over with their students in that place, especially from Eastern Europe. And there was another one, bro. There was another guy called Damir. Damir's coach and Alexia's coach used to come over with them. This bald fella, and he was mean, but he didn't. At the time, he didn't have a heap of English, but he would teach me just by showing me, like wrestling and wall work and just real basic stuff that was really fundamentally sound. And so, yeah, man, I was like spoilt for choice and who to learn from. And like, yeah, like George, Roger, and all them too, man. Those guys would be in the game forever.
Did you realize, like, at the time that you were kind of getting this MMA apprenticeship going, that you were kind of seeing this? Did you have a vision for yourself and say, like, 4 or 5 years, yeah, I want to fight in the UFC, I want to do MMA, I want to do all this, and I'm going to soak up all this? Or were you just kind of just going with the flow, running with the moment?
Yeah, I was just living, bro. I was just living. Like the first time, I remember I was with Woody when I was at another gym. I was at a Thai gym. I wasn't even at Target yet, bro. And he was like, "Oh, we're just gonna go have a feed with my mate Roger." And I was like, "Yeah, man." So I went with him. I met Roger. I didn't even know who Roger was, bro. Like, he was famous as, you know, then. And I was just sat with him, this like tattooed dude, and he was like real cool. I was like, "This guy's the man." And then like, it took me ages, bro, like 6 months till I actually found out who he was. And I was like, "Ooh, fuck, that guy's pretty famous." And then, yeah, bro, I just didn't have any interest in MMA ever. And then I went to Tiger, still was strictly Muay Thai, kickboxing, just all I cared about, even when I was coaching. And then, you know, one time George, you know, Frank's brother and Roger were like, "Oh, you should start wrestling." And I was like, nah. And then he gave me a pair of wrestling boots. And then I was coaching a UFC fighter at the time. I was helping him. Well, not really coaching him. I was holding his pads. A guy called Mirbek Taisumov. We called him Iron Man, bro. He was a unit, such a beast of a dude, and he was a real good wrestler. And I don't know how it happened, but some camp I ended up being his wrestling partner, and I was fresh as, I don't know any wrestling, bro, and I learned quick. Like, I got thrown in the deep end with Mirbek. Mirbek goes and wrestles with like the Turkish wrestling Olympic team and stuff like this. And man, this dude was like power doubling me and shit. And I was like, man, I need to learn how to swim here because I am sinking. And that's how I started wrestling. That's how I started to learn how to wrestle. And then I just sort of did it here and there when maybe I could go home and I'd sort of slack off a bit. But George and Roger taught me heaps too.
So that's still in that 5-6 year period, or 4 or 5 period, from 21 to 22 up until like 25, 26. You go on that. When did you have your first MMA fight after all that? Because you're still fighting kickboxing, doing heaps of fight. You had like going over to China and you were doing all of that. When did you get the first MMA fight in?
Oh, I had my first MMA fight, bro, actually years before that by accident. I was in I was at a gym in Rawai. I was living with Woody, and I was training at Lion Muay Thai, and he was like coaching at another gym, Phuket Fit, doing strength and stuff. And the dude he's actually in jail now. The guy that owned Lion Muay Thai is a dodgy bastard, bro. He was like, "Oh, there's Muay Thai fights in Burma with MMA gloves. You, Anvar, Umar, you guys are going to go do it." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." Because like, we were like sponsored. So we just got told to go fight there. I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And so I go up there for all those dudes and these Thais. And then we get to Burma. I'm pretty damn sure, bro, I was one of the first foreigners to fight in Burma. Because that was like, I was 20 or 21. Something like that. It was early, bro. And there was like dirt roads, no bitumen. It was a crazy place, Burma. And they tripped out that there was foreigners there. They were like, "What the fuck?" Everywhere we went, though, they were like, "Oh," and I was like, "Man, this is new." And then we went and fought, bro, at like 1 in the afternoon or lunchtime or something. And like, it was in a stadium in a cage, and there was like bare knuckle fights before us, like just Burmese bare knuckle scraps. And I was like, "Damn, this is fucking crazy. This is dope, though." And then when we got the rules meeting. When we got the rules meeting, they started doing like the whole, grounded opponent thing, like the ref. And I'm like, "What the fuck?" And then I looked at the boys, and then like, we're just doing MMA, bro. The guy didn't tell us. We're just in the MMA fight. And I was like, "Oh shit." And then I remember doing some grappling when I was like 15 at my old gym in Christchurch here, like a little bit. Bro, I was white belt as, but I'd sometimes jump on the jits mat. So I knew a couple of things. And then in the fight, bro, we ended up on the ground. And I was like, actually, it was doing all right, bro. I was like going to north-south, and then I was actually kind of going for an armbar. I think it's on YouTube. I started making my way towards an armbar. Like I said earlier, I just got my way out of that situation with string. And then the ref stood us up for some reason. I was like, oh. And then I won by KO. So that was my first MMA fight.
How old were you? How old was that? Like 21, 22, something like that?
Yeah, you go on YouTube and have a look. I was young as, I was baby-faced as, bro. But the guy was like drifting around the cage, trying to get away from me. And then I just like intercepted him with this right hand. Boom! And just slapped him, bro. Just went out dead. And he was out for ages and ages. I remember seeing him after, bro, and he was like vomiting and stuff. I was like, man, shit, I hit that guy hard. Probably just a pure panic punch. Just put like the wrath of fucking the gods behind it. I was like, I'm an MMA, fuck, bang.
Right, that guy's coach probably told him he was going to like his first grappling tournament or something. They're like, yeah, no, come to Burma and do some jiu-jitsu.
He was like Malaysian, bro. He was an MMA fighter. His name was Kai Chi.
Oh, so he was legit, eh?
Well, definitely wasn't my best opponent, but he was, he did MMA and he was all right.
Yeah, all right, until you put him back on heaven's door. But let's talk about when you went back. Where did Citykickboxing come into this equation? Eugene and Israel and obviously Dan and that were floating back and forth in between Tiger and training over there. When was the time when you were like, okay, I'm going to head back home, but not just head back home? You're not going to Church, you're going back up to Auckland and going up there to train?
What happened? I think you checked me up one time. He was coming over with Israel. He wanted to come over a couple of weeks before they had a fight in China. Don't know why. And so I was like, yeah, cool. So we sussed out their training and stuff like that. And there's actually a video online of Izzy sparring in the gym, like sparring Volko and all these guys in the fucking war room, we called it. It was like a tiny room, bro, that was boxed off, and it was a lot of fights happened in there. A lot of culture clashes happened in there, bro. Fucking hell. But I was the mediator too. But so we're training for a fight in China, and then I was sparring in that same session, bro, and this guy kneed me in the eye socket. And I got 26 stitches, bro, like this. Boom. Jesus. Like 13 up there and 13 down there. Like 8 days or 10 days before the fight. I was like, oh, shit. So I kept the fight. I was like, no, don't cancel. I'm all good. Hughes didn't really know me then. He was like, wasn't quite coaching me. We were sort of just like, mates. And he'd come over and help pads for me. And so because I couldn't spar, he was like, oh, we'll just do heaps of pads. I was like, yeah, man. So he was teaching me all these angles. Probably the first time my feet ever moved in that direction in my fight life. So I was doing all these angles with him, and I think he was just testing me to see if I'd maybe use them in the fight or seeing if I could like grow, because I was pretty like one-dimensional back then, even though I was still pretty old, 24, 25. And we went to China, so I took the stitches out early. We went to China. Definitely one of the worst weight cuts in memory. Because the Wednesday before we left, we all went to Korean barbecue. So we're weighing in Friday, and we had all this shit, and it was so MSG loaded, bro. And we get there, and I'm like 81 kilo fighting at 75, and I'm just not sweating, bro. And I was thinking, the morning of the fight, I woke up like 78. Like, I was like, man, my skin feels real tight and shit. Like, what the hell? So we were up. I woke you up at like 5 a.m., bro, because we were weighing in at like 9. We're up. I was sleeping up on this mezzanine. I cleared out all the beds. I got the heater going, bro. And like, I was in a shit state because we'd been running on the treadmills the night before, and I still wasn't really sweating. And then I was boxing on the pads of him, and I was just barely sweating. And I got down to like 76, and I was cooked, man. I couldn't barely move. Lips were stuck to my face. I just went and sat in the shower with the shower pointing at the wall, running boiling hot. So I was making like a steam room. And I was just sitting there thinking, oh, fuck, I'm going to miss weight. And bro, I jumped the scales like an hour later, and I was on weight. I was like, man. And so I made weight. went in there and fought, and I did like probably the most head movement and angles I've ever ripped in a fight, but I think that one's on my Instagram. I was like slipping, cutting angles, beat this dude up, mean. And Huge was like, oh shit, you can actually change. And so he was like, oh, you should. And then I took the fight with John Wayne Parr. John Wayne Parr messaged me when I got back to Thailand. He's like, do you want a rematch? He's like, oh, I feel like I should offer you a rematch because you took the fight on short notice last time. I was like, yeah, but I'll fight you again. And so I told Huge, he was like, oh, you should, you know, if you want to come home and train for that, be a good idea. I'll help you out. I was like, mean, might do that because that fight was pretty good that I just had. So I went home, trained with him with Wayne, and, you know, we saw what happened to Wayne in that fight. And then I was like, that was dope. So I went back to Thailand, and then I had to fight a rematch of Steve Moxon. And same thing, he rang me up. He's like, yeah, you should come train here for that one. So I moved home again for like 8 weeks. Beat Steve with his game plan. And I was like, all right, better go home now. This guy's pretty good.
Yeah, so that was the point when you realized, okay, like Huge really knows what he's talking about. And you could see the results. You're like, I'm developing as a fighter. I'm changing.
Yeah. So that's when I shifted back there, bro.
I'm sure anyone that like kind of knows you personally, I could only imagine that wasn't such a forthcoming thing for you. I doubt you went with open arms and jumped at him and said, yeah, Huge, like, absolutely, I'll take all your advice on board. What was like the process? How did he break it down for you? Like, and I'm sure this would have been the thick of Angry Brad as well. So like, how did he like break down that wall and get you to change?
But we had a pretty different relationship back then, bro. It wasn't like abusive as it is now, you know, between us. But it was he was sort of just kind of you know, drip feeding me ideas into my mind, and he'd sort of like give me an idea or some, you know, like his opinion, and let it sort of marinate, and I'd mull it over for a while, and you know, because I've been running my own ship for a long time, bro. I've been running my own. That was a big thing with me, is like I'd been doing my own shit, bro. No one had been really telling me what to do. I'd been teaching myself, teaching other people. So it was maybe he knew it was going to be harder to, or maybe he realized that maybe he'd come across someone like that before. I don't know, man. Like, the guy's old. I'm sure he's come across people like that before, and just knew how to deal with that sort of personality. Fuck, maybe he had the same personality when he was younger. Who knows? But he did it pretty well. Do
you think you were just kind of missing that? Were you missing that coach or mentor or role model figure?
Yeah.
Do you think, like, looking back on it now?
Yeah, I definitely was. Like, you know, I had some really mean coaches at Liga when I was younger. I was doing Muay Thai. I had like Dan Hatch and Steve Harm and, you know, Richie and Tony. I just had like monsters, bro. And I just turn up to the gym, and then I'd just do what they said. And I fought mean then too. And so some days in Thailand, man, fuck, you know, I didn't want to train, and there was nobody telling me there to go to training. So if I was like tired or like worked from holding pads and stuff, just go home, bro. You know, like, I was the boss of me. And yeah, so it was nice to like move home and just train sort of monotonously.
That's funny. And I think we'll probably break this up into 2 podcasts. So I'm just gonna say this here so we can probably cut that recording and start the second one.